So 17 years ago today, I self-surrendered to federal prison for 18 months. And while the journey was productive, I can't help but think, and probably have wasted more days than I would care to admit, wondering what I could have done differently that perhaps would have helped me avoid federal prison. And I'm going to share some of those insights in this video. And I will be transparent. Some of these things are like so obvious. I went to prison at 33. I'm 50 now. So when I look back on some of these things I wish I'd have done differently, and as I read them, I'm like, so obvious. Hello, it's right in front of you. How did I not know any better? Yet 17 years later and working with so many people, I've learned I'm not alone in making these decisions. So perhaps if you're wherever you are in this process, it could compel you to introspect, to reevaluate choices you're making. And even if you do the things I suggest in this video, it doesn't guarantee you're not going to go to prison, but perhaps you can get a better outcome and live with more dignity along the way. And those are things that I'm going to discuss. By the way, to all of you who've been on this journey with me for so long, I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you. Number one, the most obvious thing of all, what I would have done differently. Once I learned that I was a target, and that was really the 28th of April, 2005, the same date, I just went to prison 3 years to the day later. Shortly after the FBI showed up at my home, I transferred title out of my name. And I didn't realize at the time, like, the damage my conduct was already done. But by transferring title of my home out of my name, it gave them the impression like this is a bad guy, he's hiding assets. And of course, here's the excuse, right? The rationalization. I didn't know. I went online and I presumed they're going to take my home. I'm going to be homeless. And if it's not in my name, they can't do that. So even though I eventually hired a lawyer who said, you need to transfer title back, and I did, the damage was already done because it looked as if I was hiding assets. So we talk a lot through our webinars and our work about putting yourself in the shoes of stakeholders. What is their perception of you? And their perception of me wasn't great because they heard about my conduct from UBS and Bear Stearns and my co-defendant who later got 5 years in prison. But then I was like reaffirming how they perceived me through a simple LexisNexis search, and they can see that I transfer title out of my name. I wasn't doing myself any favors. Now, number two, I worked terribly with my lawyers. I was not transparent. Let's not sugarcoat it. I lied. And again, it sounds so obvious that if you're a defendant, you're going to work openly with your lawyers and give them all of the facts, but I didn't. I mean, outright lies, giving them money, going through their hourly rate, only to then refill the coffers and then do it again and then do it again. So not only was I spending tons of money as they were listening to me and initially believing what I told them, which then compelled them to investigate and research and question, just wasting money, while I'm lying to them and spinning tails, you have the government continuing to investigate and really speak with truth tellers, with people who are trying to advance their efforts and frankly doing a better job of putting themselves in a stakeholder's shoes. So to all of you going through this process, it's one thing not to just say don't lie to your lawyer. A number of you don't fully understand what happened or the government's version of events. You can't even agree with anything the government is saying. So it's a very healthy, helpful exercise to go through like an introspective process to the extent that you can. Say, what did I do? Why did I do it? What is their version? If I put myself in their shoes, can I agree with any of it? And from there, you're in a position to create a better message. So I beseech, I beg all of you, work openly with your lawyer. And if you're not sure if you should say something, say it. That's why you hired a lawyer. They care about you. They want you to get the best outcome. Number three, lying to the government was devastating for me. And they had outright evidence that I was trying to deceive them. And I know that had I been truthful with them from the beginning, many things would have happened. One, there's a really good chance I might not even go to prison. Two, if I spoke openly with them and I didn't lie to them, there could have been an opportunity for me to give them information down the road about others and UBS and how others were involved in this. But because I got off to such a bad start with them, nothing that I could say was credible. And they would never be able to use me as a defendant or someone that they could rely on to help catch other cases. And again, it sounds so obvious, don't lie to the government, but in retrospect, I was trying to protect this image, this facade of who I once was, how I wanted them to perceive me. And I didn't fully understand what Paul Bertrand in a recent webinar told us, which is like they are investigating full time. They are building a case full time. They're opening in Excel spreadsheets. They're reviewing emails, text messages. They're speaking to defendants. I didn't fully understand that. I kind of bought into this presumption of, hey, everyone knows I'm the stockbroker. I turned the other way for commissions. UBS was complicit and involved. Don't they have bigger things to worry about than me? Terrible, flawed, disastrous thinking that compelled the Department of Justice to really tell Judge Wilson they want to make an example out of me. Number 4, and I think this to be the most important and most profound, I wasn't engaged in my case. I just wasn't. I outsourced work. I presumed other people like my lawyers would handle it, whatever that even means. And by not being engaged, I wasn't able to see the nuances, the small details, the telltale signs that could have helped me influence a probation officer or a judge. Active engagement is essential to managing a government investigation. You've got to be fully vested in every nuance and every detail. And then if you are really engaged, you will pick up a sixth sense for opportunities that you can seize. And I didn't do that, right? I would just sort of wait for my lawyers to call. Oh, they called me. They either want money, the government wants to see me, or they have a question. And I'd be like, oh, I hope I don't hear from them for months. And I would do nothing throughout these. I would do absolutely nothing over the course of the months between hearing from my lawyers. Even after interviewing with the FBI April 28, 2005, I didn't get a call from my lawyers for 11 months later. No engagement, no nothing, hoping this experience was beyond me, that they'd forgotten about me, that they had moved on. And of course they hadn't. So if there's one piece of advice I can give to any defendant, besides the obvious of don't transfer in title, don't lie to the lawyers, don't lie to your government, it's really being engaged in your own case. A few more things. I didn't live with dignity. I've covered that extensively through our webinars and lessons from prison. I lived with a sense of shame and regret, and I lived as if I were the victim. And that is a terrible, terrible way to live, living as if you are the victim. I avoided family events. I was jealous and envious of friends who were building businesses the right way. And even though I only got 18 months in prison, so many people mock that, and that's fine. It wasn't a very long time in prison. It was that time before I went in that I had the massive amounts of regret. And coming back to number 4, I know had I been engaged in my own life and felt okay, today's a tough day, but I'm working on something that could lead to a better outcome. If I was engaged, it would have helped me live with more dignity, have a better plan. Just some days struggling, I couldn't get out of bed, and even brushing my teeth felt like a Herculean task. And I know that I'm not alone, because there are so many people in our community who are enduring the same fate, and admittedly have it measurably harder than me. I was 31 or 32 when I was a target. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I lived alone. I could isolate myself, and there were some complications with that because there was no one really holding me accountable. I do get up, get it together, but many people have those same complications with family, with children, and I know how long these cases can take to play out, which is why for so many of you, the guilty plea or conviction is harder than, the guilty plea is harder than even a sentencing, because at least at sentencing, you have clarity. Number 6, I presumed certain things would happen in my life for whatever reason. I didn't have any experience. I just somehow thought things would figure out. So for the 3 years before I went to prison while selling real estate, I convinced myself that even though I had pled guilty to a crime, a fraud crime, that because it was as a stockbroker, not a real estate agent, that there are no new skills I need to develop, because it is a formality that I will return to my real estate career when I come home. And frankly, it wasn't until I was in prison going through this sort of Socratic type questioning with Michael Santos, helping me understand, well, you owe restitution, you're going to be on probation. What's the real likelihood that you will be able to maintain your license? What's the evidence or data out there for other executives in similar situations? And I didn't want to embrace that. I wasn't engaged. I presume something would happen, like I presumed banking relationships would continue, or I presumed so many of these other collateral consequences might not be as applicable to me. And guess what? They are, and I know if you're watching this, they're applicable to you as well. So the earlier you can get engaged and make better decisions, no guarantee it keeps you out of jail, but I think you get a better outcome and set yourself up for a better sentence, a more productive life in prison, and then frankly, the hardest part, coming home. And that's how I'm going to wrap up the last item here, takeaway on my 17-year anniversary of surrendering to Taft Federal Prison Camp. But this time, 11:15, I'd already been processed in. I was getting ready to go to the chow hall or dining room for the first time. Last but not least, I didn't really do anything to document my life and journey for the 3 years before I went to prison. And that was a lot of regret that I have. Once I went to prison, as you can see in my prison journal and literature that Michael helped me create, I began to document everything, to create a timeline, to show the good and bad, the vulnerable, the mistakes, lessons learned, because I wanted to share it with my family, with stakeholders like a probation officer, and I'm continuing to build that online library. I believe had I done the work and been engaged and documented some of my progress and growth for the 3 years before I was sentenced, I would have had a better outcome because I would have been able to overcome so much of the cynicism that Judge Wilson had. You said you're sorry because you got caught. You're paying back money to avoid prison. You're relying on your eloquent lawyers to make the case that your conduct was out of character. You're relying on your lawyers to say that UBS was culpable. And to a degree, I even relied on the U.S. attorney who acknowledged in court that I was swept into this. And had it not been for my co-defendant's conduct, I never would have become immersed in a government investigation. Others were sharing parts of my life, good and bad, with the government. I did very little to demonstrate why I was a candidate for leniency, did very little to demonstrate and own so much of what was actually true. I shouldn't have transferred title out of my name. It is a crime to lie to the government. But what I didn't embrace was I lied to the government a good 2 years or so before, 3 years before I was sentenced. I had time to rebuild a new record and demonstrate I was naive. I didn't understand the system. There should be consequences for lying to the government and breaking the law. Here's my plan to do better, irrespective of what happens at sentencing. So I heavily regret not documenting my journey, both to influence stakeholders, but also my family, and let them know what I was learning through this experience. If journaling was good enough for Marcus Aurelius thousands of years ago, it should be good enough for us too. But again, it requires work and active engagement. That's how I'm going to wrap up this video on my 17-year anniversary of self-surrendering to federal prison. I'm so thankful for all of you who joined the White Collar Advice community and who have been on this journey with me through so many ups and downs that anyone faces, whether you've gone to prison or not. If you'd like to join our community, feel free to join our weekly webinar. We're going to do one in about 90 minutes. Every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. We do a webinar, so you can register at White Collar Advice. Overcoming a little cold, so bear with me in dealing with my throat. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.